Daniel Fernandes, and I'm here with Faisal Ensaun. We are your hosts, and today's episode is called Get Better at No. And if you're a coach, you probably get a lot of no. And you should be getting no's because if you're not getting no's, you're probably not getting clients either. And sometimes the no is internal, but we're talking about the no from clients today. And so if you want to know how to turn those no's into yeses or really get more yeses, you got to live in the land of no. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about that, right? And both Faisal and myself both have coaching businesses, and we get a lot of no's. And that's part of the game. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Faisal, you get a lot of no's too?
Yeah, lots and lots and lots. Sometimes you lose track of no's.
Yeah. So many no's that you can't keep track of them. That's actually a sign that you're getting a lot more yeses too.
Yep. It's one of those things where, like in theory, everybody is exposed to that as like get more no's. Yes lives in the land of no, but in practice it shows up very differently because there are different elements of it we're dealing with. One, we have to deal with ourselves because we've all been trained to look at no as negatively. Most of us have a negative reaction to no. Most of us don't know how to respond to no. Most of us look at that as negative feedback versus positive feedback. So that's the internal piece of it. The external piece of it, we don't actually know how the marketplace works. Is like the reality is that it's a business, you might have heard of it, is a numbers game, which means that it's a probability game. It's like, how many people are you going to reach out to? Yes, there's a piece that you have a lot more. I was talking to my brother-in-law the other day. We were talking about poker. I'm like, I feel like business is the same thing, except I have more control in business than I do in poker.
Yeah,
it's the same probability game, but I have a lot more control in the process. Just as fun. But you still have to play the same game, which means that higher numbers translate to higher yeses. And the way the game is set up, the name of the game is that you need to get the no's to get the yes. So we're not actually, unless you grew up in an entrepreneurial family, you don't understand that experientially. You don't know that. So it doesn't click in until you actually do it. So at least those two frames are important. And also the third frame I would say is most people around us haven't gone through a journey like this. So even the feedback we're getting about both the internal and external is the confusing feedback. Is like, well, and so many people gave me advice about it. It's like, oh, that's not working. Maybe cut your losses. But they didn't know what was going on. If they actually understood it, it was like, no, you're on the right track. So they were confirming my own judgments and fears and so many things.
Yeah.
So three levels that are not working. And then the coach is sitting there is like, something is wrong.
Well, I'm going to summarize what you said because I think it's actually really awesome, which is one is there's a lot of internal no's and resistance that you get because you got no's. But there's a version of that is the no's that you give yourself as a result. Like, I got a no from this client, so no, I'm not going to try and put myself out there to the next client. That's like, there's two facets of internal no's. Like, we hate the no's, but then we hate like progressing because we're giving ourselves no's too, because we're afraid, we're unsafe, we're unfamiliar, we don't like it. And this is the same kind of feeling that you can have with avoiding important conversations that you might get from other areas of your life. But the second lens is that external no's, like not understanding the marketplace is really important also. But I think the thing that you said that I really love is like, we're all surrounded by people who have no idea what we're trying to do and what we're doing and what it really means. So if you tell your friend, hey, like I had this great client lead and they said no, then they're like, too bad. Maybe you shouldn't be doing this anyway. That's the kind of feedback you'll get from a friend. Or like, yeah, just keep on going. That's not very practical advice, And yeah, sometimes the answer is keep on going. Sometimes the answer is like maybe adapt and learn and don't get discouraged. There's lots of good feedback out there, but a lot of feedback you get from people who don't know, they're like, it's just going to reinforce your reasons for stopping, right? Yeah. So I think that's really valuable too, to really recognize that and have that awareness as a coach that it's the opposite signal you should interpret from the no's. The no means you did something. You put yourself out there. You made an offer. You made an invitation. You got to know. Now that tells you something like, is this the right kind of client? Or maybe am I doing something that could be tweaked? Can I improve? Like, that's all feedback. Every no is like the feedback you actually need to get better, right? So I love that, that feedback is is the process. It's
Yeah.
part of the process.
And I'm imagining somebody sitting there listening who's either started this process or who's been there for a little bit. And at times they feel discouraged. At times they're struggling to even make the next move. And when we're saying all this, it intellectually makes a lot of sense. But as we know, we don't actually make decisions on intellect most of the time. We make decisions based on emotions. We make decisions based on whatever's in front of us. We make decisions based on our comforts and discomforts. And like one of my favorite sayings to my clients is that, well, when I ask them about, well, how many people did you reach out to? And they will say, well, I feel like I reached out. I'm like, let me stop you. Like, your feelings are really important, but it's not important in this context.
That's not data of how many people you actually reached out
But
to.
that's how we
Yeah.
the main data we usually have, and we've, I mean, that's the intuitive human path, is right. And like, how did human beings evolve? We dealt with people in front of us and they said something that made it, those were very useful, that was very useful in interpersonal relationships. But this, that data doesn't apply to large amounts of data when you're running a business, when you're trying to make decisions that actually has no, it doesn't matter what you feel with that data. It's just a marketplace giving you neutral data to make decisions around that. So most of us, just, we have evolved that way. And until you've actually built something of your own, and this is why it's so hard to create value in the marketplace, because we bring our human side to it in a marketplace that might not actually care about what that human side might be. And like, what that means in a bigger sense, who cares? Who knows? That's a bigger conversation. But in the day-to-day, what that means is that you're hearing this intellectually makes sense. So then how do we bridge the gap from, okay, it makes sense to, but when I'm trying to do this, I can't do anything. I can't move forward. I'm stuck in my own thoughts and feelings. I'm surrounded by people who are constantly giving me feedback. Oh, it will be good, or no, it's not good. Cut your losses. And then when I'm trying to do the thing, I have a lot of resistance, or I keep telling myself I'm doing the work and it's not working. How do we bridge the gap there? Is like, I think that is a deeper question. So my question to you, Daniel, would be, is how did you kind of bridge that gap, and
Well,
how have you gotten
there's two
better?
parts of this, right? Like I love the poker analogy you brought up, right? Which because like there's a thing in poker called variance, right? If you play one hand, um, then and if you lose all your money on that one hand, you don't have a chance to keep on playing, right? And so if you play for 2 hours, you're gonna see a wide variety of hands. You're gonna see a wide variety of probabilities. You're gonna see a wide variety of examples and interactions with people at the table. And so you have the chance. So you can't like risk all your bankroll on the first hand unless you have high probabilities. But you may actually need to do that multiple times because the variance is really terrible for you this time, right? So there's a lot of similarity in business because what you said was this law of large numbers. If you have three prospects and they all say no, and you feel like you're like totally defeated, all of a sudden like you have resistance to moving forward because you don't feel good. I went through this. Sometimes I still go through it, to be honest. And I create resistance, right? That's the internal resistance. But if you have 100 people that you're going to talk to or that you have talked to, and you invited 100 people and they all said no, now you have real data on what's going wrong. If you have 3 people, you
Yeah.
don't have that much real data. And out of 100 people, almost certainly 100 people will not say no, right? As you get to that 100, you're learning as you go. You should be adapting and iterating, and you should be able to like practice. I've done so many discovery sessions that I know like things that are not to do, and I still do sometimes the wrong thing, right? And that's just good data. And every time I do something wrong, I'm like, so the other day I had a discovery session with somebody that we connected and I talked to them and had like a really good feeling about coaching together. And it's like I knew 17 different ways I could support them in their life. And I said, let's just have a discovery session. And they're like, yeah, let's do this. So we had an amazing discovery session. And then I, rookie mistake, texted them an offer. And that was just like such a bad move. I'm like, why did I do that? Was I like on low sleep? And I realized that that doesn't actually work. I already know this. So I still make those mistakes. And then I was really sad that I lost that client. And I, it slowed me down. It didn't stop me, but it slowed me down, right? And but in the past, it certainly stopped me for weeks, months at a time, where I would focus on doing other things than trying to reach out to clients because I didn't want to have that kind of experience. I always think back to the Future scene where Marty's dad is talking to him. It's like, I just don't know if I can take that kind of rejection. Yes, you can, and yes, you must, and yes, you must go through that to get to the other side of getting clients. And also, that's a very valuable experience for you as a coach to go through, because like I learned, like that's actually good data, even though it feels like crap. It's good data. You want to feel that because that's how you get better. Like in every career, it's the same thing. Like in my engineering career, like I had to figure it out by stumbling through it and like, oh, maybe I could do this way, and then that doesn't work, and you try something else. But you don't take it personally as much in the engineering world, whereas in coaching, you tend to take it personally. So I've take one of the ways I got through it is just stop taking things as personally. Like I still take it a little bit
How did you do that? Like, what was that? And that's the part that's important. Somebody might be going through that, but I'm like, well, I don't know how to do that. It's like, I get what you're saying, but how did you kind of? I remember I used the second year I went to the certification, and then the third year, every time I would come out, it was the same exact information, not that different, with a little bit of a nuance, but I would hear more, and I'd be like, and I would do calculations like, I've reached out to 10 people and I feel like a failure. Like, if I knew what I knew now, I'm like, no, reach out to 20 other people. But in my frame, I thought it was a problem when in reality it was not. So like how did you bridge those two things? Like, was that the experience? Was that what you learned? Was that a mix of?
I think it was like a handful of things. One, it was just staying in the game. But that can mean a lot of things. Like I thought I was still in the game, but when I actually wasn't still in the game. Like in the first early few years, like honestly, it was years for me where I thought I was in the game, but I wasn't really in the game. I was just like pretending to be in the game because I was avoiding the things that didn't feel good, that had high friction for
What
me.
does that
Like
look like? Pretending to be in the game. What does that
pretending to
look
be in a
like?
game means like, oh, I'm building my website. Oh, I'm working on a logo for my business. I need to look perfect. Instead of the things that I should have been doing, was just building relationships and like talking to people and having conversations and seeing, like build like if I had one rule from the beginning I should have followed, it's like just your focus should become to be a super connector, someone who connects really well with other people and sees places that you can add value, and just don't stop doing that. Like always be doing that as a way of life. That is kind of like the thing that I wish I had known. Because if you see it that way, it's like, hey, my job is to become a super connector. It doesn't matter who refuses to connect. It's not on them. It's on me. And take responsibility for that role. I think that would have made a huge difference. And today I feel like I'm a lot better at it. I'm still not perfect at it for sure. The second thing that I think I had to get over was just having enough reps to do discovery calls over and over again, to invite people to discovery calls over and over again, to make enough mistakes to realize like what the patterns are, and not just intellectually, but like no, like I could, today if you said somebody's wants to go to coaching discovery call, I could go into that without a script. I could just like sit them down for an hour and a half to 2 hours and like explore their life as a landscape from a like discovery perspective, and together we'll get a lot of clarity for them and figure out like something really valuable will always come up many times, many things that are valuable, and I just have enough reps that I've done it, so I know I can do that. I know it's possible. And sometimes maybe it can't be done, depending on how open that person is, or the level of value you can or cannot provide to them. But like having enough reps really makes a difference. I can't even count how many discovery sessions I've done. Is it in the thousands? It's certainly over. It's in at least the high hundreds, if not thousands. Probably 1,000 discovery sessions. No, maybe not quite 1,000. If I'm truly honest, it's probably more like 500 to 700, somewhere in there, I would think. And honestly, that's not being full-time committed to the business. If I knew more today than what I knew back then, and things have changed today. Like today, like I think it's more valuable to have more of a niche, but you don't need it to really move yourself forward. Like I haven't had a clear niche for a long time. You don't actually need that. Um, but it can certainly make the game easier for you if you know exactly who you want to serve. But part of the evolution, here's what I didn't know that I wish I knew, that today I feel much better with, is like your niche is always evolving. It's always
Yeah.
changing. And the more you get reps, the more you actually do coach, whether they sign up with you or not, the more you learn about what you like, what you don't like, who you work with well, who you don't work with well, who needs you, who doesn't need you, what the market is asking for, what it's not asking for. There's so many pieces of this puzzle. It's like hard to answer just one thing, right? There's like a lot of
No,
pieces of the puzzle.
I think you are answering the couple of important pieces. The one is most there are two types of coaches. Like, if I were to overly generalize, One is somebody will come to me and they're actually, and I'm meeting somebody like that this week, who they're actually fairly successful generally on their own, and they didn't figure it out through some niche building process, website, or anything. They actually took what they knew and went out there and started talking to a bunch of people. Now, why did this person reach out to me? Is like they've been doing it for a while. They don't know because they're just throwing stuff at the wall and making it happen. So it's taking a lot more energy, time, and everything, and they're learning as they're going, and they have some gaps in knowledge. So it's not, they're making money, and this is the key. They're making money doing that, and a lot of times they're self-critical too. It's like, I don't know if I'm doing the right thing. And then there's the other type of coach, which I was that kind of coach in the beginning, was that, oh, and what you described, let me build my website, let me build this, let me build my logo, let me talk to this person about my business plan. But I wasn't doing the thing, and the thing was to actually the reps. And a big reason why I wasn't doing that, because I was actually very, very uncomfortable to get in front of somebody and struggle to support them. Because when you get down to it, actually supporting somebody is actually fairly hard. It's in theory, it sounds easy. It's like, well, I'm just gonna get a call. I have a framework, I can help them, or I don't have a framework, I have some experience in training. But when you get in front of another person who's struggling with real problems and you try to navigate that, even in that first session, you will realize that you're actually struggling more than them. And you're trying to figure, and we see that clearly in our community when we're doing, even with more experienced coaches, when we're doing our coaching clinic, and you can see it on their face. They're trying to find ways to ask a better question to challenge them to do it. And these are more experienced coaches in many times. And the ones who are not, they're all of a sudden they get struggle. And then post that session, when we're going towards feedback, they share their thoughts. It's like, I didn't know which direction to go to. That's the reality of actually serving people, is that you won't know actually in the first 10, 20, 30 sessions, you're going to struggle. Now, if you talk to a coach who hasn't done that, they've only done one, they will talk about themselves a little bit differently. They'll be like, yeah, I think I can really help people. I think my coaching is valued at 6,000, 10,000. How do you know that? And then to make matters worse, they're told by the certification or the marketing or the language, or it's like, well, your coaching is worth that much. You don't know that. They would have to be in that experience to actually prove that, because it's not up to them to decide. It's about for the client to decide. So the reason why we don't do it is because it's incredibly uncomfortable. And then this is why they say it takes more courage to build a business or to serve people than it takes intelligence a lot of times. Because you have to do the reps and be open to looking at it. Well, I struggled here. What can I learn here? What kind of feedback do I need? And a lot of the coaches who come to me, they're like, when you dig in, you're like, I'm struggling here. I don't know how to help this person, or I don't know how to reach out. And if I do reach out, to how do I talk to them? What kind of questions do I ask them? Or how do I make this offer? I'm struggling in each of the steps of the process. But then if somebody hasn't done it, it's like, oh, I'm doing fairly well. The only thing that's missing is nobody's coming to me to be coached. Like, I don't think that's real. And I know, because I kept saying that.
Yeah. I mean, you could, I like the idea of what you said before, which is about being data driven. The data can, like, if you're honest about the data will tell you exactly where the problem in your pipeline is. And the problem in your pipeline, once you solve that, there's another problem. There's always a constraint in your business. And usually in a coaching business, especially at the beginning, actually almost always, even forever, as my theory, it's you. You're the constraint, but some part of what you're doing or not doing, or what you're feeling or not feeling, or where you're engaging or not engaging, that's where the constraint usually lies. So if you tell me, like, nobody's coming to book calls with me, and like, well, are you inviting people to book calls? No. Well, okay. Well, then that's the constraint. Just invite them. Well, I don't have anybody. Like, okay, if you're not inviting people to book calls, is that because nobody's coming to your calls? No, people are coming to my calls, but I don't make the offer. Okay, so there's constraint. If you work it backwards, all the way from getting the client, there's that part of your puzzle that is missing, and usually there's an emotional resistance or a lack of safety that you have, or familiarity with taking that step and really mastering it. And I've still got work to do in this process, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm pretty good at the making of the offers, but I'm not always the best at doing really great on the re-inviting, like re-inviting some people to
Yeah.
the, like, I'll re-invite somebody, but I have 3 people that I'm supposed to be reaching out to who are interested that I haven't actually done that with. I'm just thinking through it this morning. I was thinking, like, who's on my list that I I lost touch with, right? Like there's a piece of my puzzle that's also I'm working on. So like wherever the puzzle is for you, there's a whole continuum, there's a whole mountain you're climbing as a coach, and everybody's at a different spot on that mountain, and that's okay. The question
Yeah.
is what's your spot and what's the constraint for you? And whatever that constraint is, it's almost guaranteed that there's an emotional driver for that constraint, or sometimes it's a logistical or knowledge barrier. But like most of the time, it's emotional when it comes to coaching for some reason, because maybe it's because we put ourselves on the line, right? It's really hard to believe
And,
that we can support someone, as you said, and so putting yourself in that position where you might not be able to provide value feels scary, but that's okay.
yeah, and again, it's easy to say that's okay, but we're all, I mean, one part, like for example, one piece of the puzzle is we've all been, uh, all of us, I think almost all of us, with a few exceptions, is that we have gotten feedback or we've done something where the process was uncomfortable and we've gotten negative feedback. And in most cases, we've gone that multiple times, not just in our homes and our education system. So we're not trained to be encouraged to go towards uncomfortable things unless you grew up in an environment where somebody was aware, where effort was rewarded a lot more than the outcome. We're given, for example, in our testing system, what happens? You're celebrated for getting better marks, but that's not the reality of the world. Yeah, that's much later, but you're not celebrated as much for the efforts. The efforts need to be celebrated over and over. In fact, Rich Lidman, one of the things it was interesting. It was one moment he was coaching somebody. She had a win and he was hesitating the win was that she got a few clients. He was hesitating to celebrate. And this is what he said. And I still remember that moment was a little bit funny. He's like, um, great job. But the effort that you put in, that was awesome. He's like, I'm gonna say this because we don't celebrate the actual win of the client. We celebrate a lot more the effort that led towards it because that's your control. So I'm just, and those are just some pieces of the puzzle. Is like we're all trained not very conducive to how the marketplace works, how life works in most cases. So we're retraining ourselves in this process. I want to go to the second factor of that. So I more often not, I mean, even in my own experience, but a lot of the coaches that I'm working with, they will describe something to me. And it's interesting, their experience of describing that is so different than what I hear as a coach, as a mentor on the other side. Their experience will be like, it's like, I did this, I did the other thing, I reached out to a bunch of people, they said no, and then I tried this other thing. And I'm listening to all this. And these are the coaches who are actually trying different things and experimenting with things. And sometimes they're getting money in the account, sometimes they're not, and they're learning the process. And then almost always I hear this thing is like, am I doing the right thing? It's like all they want, all they need is that, because they're constantly doubting the process because they don't have any frame of reference. And a lot of times all it takes is I'm like, you do know that that's very normal what you're going through. That's, I was like, and then they will look at me, they'll be like, oh, that's normal. And then I just have to describe what that normal is. And that's the biggest difference between my experience there. I've gone through it so many times that I'm like, oh, okay, I'm going through the same thing, but not once do I sit there and say, well, there's something wrong with what I'm doing. It's
You're not taking it personally anymore.
I'm not taking, no, I have no emotions towards it whatsoever. I'm like, okay, this is just in fact, I have the opposite emotions towards it because I understand my conversion rate. I'm like, well, I know as if by the time I have third or fourth conversation, I'm going to have a client. So I might as well get through it now versus let me pause, wait, did I do the right thing? I'm not thinking about any of that stuff. Well, what's next? What's next? What's
You know
next?
your next step, and you consistently take people to the next step.
And that's perspective and frame of reference. So if you, more than likely you don't have that in the beginning. This is why coaches who go towards better communities, better mentoring, better coaches, is why I say coaches need coaches. They need mentors because you're borrowing the other person's experience and confidence until you build yours. That is a crucial piece of it. And until I started borrowing other people's confidence, I didn't have it in the beginning. And I borrowed their frame of reference. Sometimes that was in a lecture. Sometimes that was in most cases that was in front of me, somebody who was sharing their experience. Sometimes that was a podcast. Sometimes that was just somebody saying, hey, you're good. This is what happens. This is just, and here's what the next level looks like. This is what you're gonna, I'm like, oh, okay, now I know. Like I'll just go towards there. But a lot of coaches, they are just in their own space, and it's also the nature of the business as well. You're sitting behind your computer, you get the instructions, which are very caricature of what you need to be doing. You're like, okay, let me apply it. You do a couple of it, but it doesn't take into account your own state, what's happening in your environment, doesn't take into account the questions you might have, the variables that well, I didn't expect that. They didn't talk about that in the instructions. How do I navigate this? I don't know. Well, so you don't have enough feedback. You don't have enough, and the feedback that you do have is completely useless. Like Daniel, you were saying, well, maybe you should keep going. Very vague. Or maybe you should cut. I heard this stuff so much. Maybe you should cut your losses. Usually, people around you, well-meaning, are saying this to because they're feeling uncomfortable. They don't want you to feel uncomfortable, and so they will tell you something that will make you feel at ease, but doesn't necessarily help you grow as a business owner.
And actually, that's the key to being a great coach is being able to sit in discomfort and not
Mm-hmm.
try to solve. Your client might be in discomfort. You need to join them in that discomfort and be uncomfortable so you can get good at being uncomfortable, right? Not only to support your clients, but also within yourself, right? We all have different levels of this, and we're all like working on ourselves as coaches. It's part of what we do, right? But being comfortable, being uncomfortable, or so to speak, being uncomfortable enough that you can be uncomfortable and not immediately solve is a hard skill for most humans. But the value is you'll be better able to support somebody if you can do that with them and for them, and give them that container because you've done it
Yeah.
enough yourself, right?
And the opposite of that is, do you have that container yourself? And then what I've seen over and over is that most coaches overestimate their ability to deal with discomfort because they've dealt with some stuff. And granted, they have experience in a different context, but sometimes that doesn't apply in this context. Sometimes it's so new that they don't know how to navigate it. And this is why you need the same container. It doesn't matter if it's a community, if it's a mentor, if it's coaches, somebody who's walked the same path, somebody who sees the struggle, somebody who is a little bit ahead of you. You need to see that. And that's part of your investment in your business. That's part of your role to see, like, well, what would help me move forward? And that's an important piece. And also the last thing I'll mention. So the first piece is iteration. And it's not the number of hours that you spend. It's like experiment, get data, and keep experimenting until you learn the lesson. Second piece of it is, do you have the right feedback for you to grow? And because you could get all kinds of feedback and it will take you all kinds of confusing direction, but then the feedback that will push you to grow and learn and iterate better. So that means, and one of my favorite sayings with some of the people that I'm working with is like, that took me 2 years to figure out, and you just figured that out in like 10 minutes. But that's the value of me working with that person. That's the value of my coach working with me. And that's why we invest in it. And then the third piece I would say is, and I want to give a frame of reference. Initially, when you're starting to get no's, you have an emotional reaction to it. You will overanalyze, overthink. You will think and sit there and work through it. And then the next level is your emotional reaction gets less because you understand data better. He's like, okay, I can work around this and I can do this thing and I can override some of the things, or I can process it better. I'd say that and this actually recently happened where I was kind of reflecting back as to what has happened in the past few weeks, few months around. It's like, it's interesting. I have very little to no emotional reaction most of the time when I hear no. But in the past, I had extreme reaction to it. In fact, I would hear a no for a month, I wouldn't do anything. For 3 months, I wouldn't do anything. That's why there was a delay between reaching out to the next person. Now I hear, and not only I'm okay with hearing no, but there's a different effort. And I did a video around this too recently, where I'm actually looking for the next no, because I know that the next no is not only taking me closer to the yes, but I need to learn enough of the lessons, and I need to learn it fast enough for me to pivot faster. And
It's
especially
kind of like hurdles, right? To get to the end of the race, there's a bunch of hurdles, and if you are afraid of that first hurdle, or if you fall on the first hurdle, you're not gonna want to do the second hurdle. But like, it's only by going for the next hurdle that you actually get to the the destination or whatever, so to speak. But it's actually not even about the destination; it's about being able to conquer bigger and bigger hurdles, right? Because of the reps that you've done.
And that's what the reality of business is, that even especially in markets that are volatile, especially in times that are ever changing, what do you need to know to continue business? Well, normally you need to stay in the game long enough, which means that you need to run a business long enough for you to learn the lessons fast enough so you can maintain and grow that business. But in volatile markets, the rate of learning needs to increase. But most people's instincts are that no, I'm going to pause, I'm going to do less because they're scared of the market. But this is why there's a quote from Warren Buffett. Some people might not like it, but it's like when
The blood in the
people
streets quote.
which one?
The blood quote.
No. There's another one that says when people get greedy, become fearful. When people
Oh,
become
yeah.
fearful, get greedy. And
Yeah.
and that second part, right now everybody's fearful. Get by greedy is like go after what you need to, because most people are gonna pause. Most people are gonna rethink. But no, you need to, once you learn the lessons fast enough in this context, then you take the biggest share of the market. You learn the lessons fast enough when most people are just pausing and waiting. In it might or might not make sense to people, but in reality is like if you don't learn the lesson fast enough, it's very easy for a business to crash. It's very easy for a lifestyle to crash. It's very easy. And so that actually gave me, even a few, like 2-3 years ago at this point, gave me the motivation. Okay, I need to learn the lessons fast enough for me to make the mistakes fast enough for me to not crash the business, but even more importantly for me to grow through this economy, because I know the promise is this, that if you can learn to do that, if you can operate within this kind of economy, you can operate within any kind of economy. And this is why businesses can run for decades, because they've seen the same patterns over and over and over. Even new variables like AI, they can navigate them better because the foundations don't change.
Yeah. And even you bring up a good point. Just because you have AI does not mean that you're gonna be running in the right direction, because you have to know how to utilize AI intelligently and have the right, approach to that that will actually help you. It's so easy to rabbit hole down AI, especially in the coaching business where there's a billion things you could be doing, and AI will definitely help you with all those billion things. But
Not only will you rabbit hole, it will actually purposely take you down the wrong.
yeah,
So
I
I'm
like to do
actually,
that.
so
Yeah.
I'm using AI for a trip planning.
Oh
It is
God.
worse than working with a human being sometimes. I'm like, well,
Well,
of
you're just
course, I
not a
need to
good
learn.
enough prompter yet.
I know, so I'm learning the prompting, but the problem is that I'm giving it multiple variables. It will take care of some of the variables, but then it will lose sight of other variables. So
You're
I'm
almost
checking.
coaching in AI, but also you have the context windows to worry about, like, and it'll forget stuff at the beginning, but it'll hallucinate, and there's lots of things that AI is getting better at, but there's also some things that right now,
It
like,
is
you have to coach
exactly
it.
like working with a human being, but also it can do, like, the backtracking is much harder because now you're like generating a bunch of answers. Now you have to
Yeah.
track multiple variables.
Yeah.
It is hard to get it to do good things, but even that, you experiment with it, you learn
Yeah.
better, you get better at prompting, you understand the outcomes better. But AI is not going to save us. You still need to do the work that will help you to, yeah, it has potential to do better, but it's not given.
Yeah. Are you harnessing it in the right way that actually makes sense for you? That's not gonna like destroy everything you're trying to do at the same time. That's a great question. That's for another podcast. But
Yeah, for
I
sure.
think the a really good metric is like, are you getting a no more and more frequently? That's like the metric. So what's your no? Let's invent this thing called a no rate. What is your number of no's per day or per week or per month, whatever you're measuring right now? Like, how many no's are you getting? And is that rate increasing? Because if the rate of no's is increasing, that means you're doing more to get those no's, and you're also going to get more yeses. And as the rates of no's increase, the rates of yeses also, well, the frequency of yeses will also increase. And then the proportion of yeses to nos, you will learn to make the conversions higher. So I like the idea of ending on like, what is your no rate? And what was it last month?
Yeah, and in
Or
my challenge around that, and I love that, is that most people will rely on their memory to do this, but no, create a spreadsheet, because your memory will lie to you, because when you're uncomfortable, you will make up shit. We all do. Or your mind, more accurately, will make up stuff. But what you do is, for example, I have one column in my spreadsheet that says no's collected, and or maybes. Like those are, I remember when I set those up years ago, those were the two most uncomfortable columns where I literally had to drag and put stuff in there or type is like, well, this person said no. But here's the cool thing, those no and not now columns are the best. Like they're mines for me now. It's like I will go back to them, send them more offers, better offers,
it's
get
like it's
creative,
a
check
not
in.
yet, or it's a not now, or it's a no for now, whatever you want to call it, right? There's so many opportunities in there. And not only it could be a no for coaching right now and maybe forever, but they might know people. There's an NO in the middle of KNOW. Who do they know? That's actually a really good way to remember
Yeah,
that.
and that's what I mean by minds, that they know other people. You've served them. They've said no to you, but that does not mean they don't want your support for their network. And then the other side of it, almost always frees up energy to focus on people who are still in the process of getting the support from me. And
Yeah.
both of those, like, unless you've experienced it, you don't see, like, you start to become very diligent. Okay, I don't want my energy to go there. I want to put it in a thing. I just want to think about these people that I'm serving right now. And then these other people come in. It's like, well, who else can I serve in their network? I've actually already supported them. And you find better creative ways of doing that. Unless you have that tracking, you're just making, your mind is making up stuff. Oh, well, I talked to this many people. I feel like I did that. That's not important.
Yeah, awesome. Well, great conversation with you, Faisal, today. So as you get better at no, make a comment or reply to us wherever you are viewing this podcast, or send us an email, or go to our website, or just go to cmc.coach, and you can join our free Facebook group for coaches who are building their businesses, so that you can get really, really good guidance from people who are already doing this in the market, as well as you can book a call with us. Just reach out to us and book a call when you join that community, and we will be happy to talk to you one on one, so you can actually get some serious guidance and evaluate where you actually are at in your business and what it is you need to focus on. Like there's a value to understanding where that constraint is, and how well are you doing with no. We want you to know that data, so we'll help you with all that. But we're excited to serve coaches, and that's what we do, both on the coaching side and the business side. So thanks for listening today, and we'll see you next time on the Coach's Journey podcast.
Yeah, thank you for listening. Make sure you share this with other people.
Right. Thanks, Faisal. Good point.